everybody, welcome back to What I Love the Podcast, and today the gang is going to record a podcast. As always, I'm Kate, I'm here with Adrian.
Hey, how's it going?
And Matt.
Hello.
Today we're going to be talking about Always Sunny in Philadelphia, and Adrian's going to be leading us through this episode.
Yeah, 2020's on fire, so who better to get us through it than It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia? Because I would love to see an episode about how the gang saves 2020. It's all crazy. So let's just talk about people who are terrible people so we feel good about ourselves. For our intro question, we'll just kind of go, since this is basically like the darker Seinfeld, which it's been called, and we'll talk about this a little bit later. I'm going to steal Matt's intro question from the Seinfeld episode. How much Always Sunny have you watched, and what is your favorite moment or episode? Start with Kate.
So I think I've watched 7 seasons? 6 or 7 seasons. I haven't kept up with it at all. But I know there was one time where I just binged everything that was available on Hulu at the time, and I just haven't gone back. But I want to, and I always mean to. But it's one of those where, like, I feel like I have to be prepared to go into it. Like, I have to be definitely in a specific kind of mood. That being said, I think my favorite episode is the Dayman episode where they do the play, just because I love that song so much. And then I would say my favorite moment, that's hard. I think my favorite moment has to be the Sickness Be Gone episode, just because I think of that moment a lot with Dennis.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then, like, right behind that is Fat Mac becoming not Fat Mac.
Yeah, that's a weird progression. I've been rewatching the series over the last couple of weeks, and it's a weird progression. As soon as that beard comes in, you're like, "Oh, this is happening," and it's not stopping. And then all of a sudden, it's not that. There's no progression downwards. It's very, very jarring. What about you, Matt?
What season does Fat Mac actually happen again? Is that 7 or 8?
Yeah, it's around that time.
So I know
It's
I watched
season 8.
I think it's 8. So I watched everything up to Fat Mac. Like, actually have seen all of it, even though it's been like years at this point. But then I've obviously watched some with Fat Mac, but I do know, like, I watched consistently and kind of been up to basically Fat Mac, and then I think I was like caught up, and then, like, once you get caught up on a show, sometimes you gotta wait for things to catch back up, and then it was just like, and then I lost it, obviously, as time went down, and TV and FX did their dumb stuff where we're gonna make FXX or whatever stupid channels they had. We go. As far as favorite moment, there's a lot of messed up moments, so I don't even know, like, which is my favorite one, because I know we talk about a lot of them all the time. The one that always...
I think, like, just full disclosure, like, this show is messed up, so, like, the fact that people like it show that, we're okay with the messed up moments. The show's still on air 15 years later.
Because, I mean, the one that probably I think we talk about most of the time is the boat episode, which is probably great. It's probably also one of the worst episodes. But, like,
yeah, because of the implication.
Yeah.
Because of the implications.
Yeah, that's peak Dennis for sure.
Yeah, it is. And so I was like, that's probably the one that comes up, I feel like comes up the most when I talk about it. Just because it's like, oh, you don't know the implication?
So I will say I've made it to season 10 because the first episode of season 10 is The Gang Beats Boggs, and that's the episode where they go on that bender.
Yeah.
Like that baseball player. And that episode is actually phenomenal.
Yeah, that one's really good. I enjoy that one a lot. Yeah. So...
And I've always wanted to put wine in Coke cans.
It's not a good idea.
It's also so many beers. That's so many beers. My bladder would I just want to go pee thinking about that episode. But I'm sure more will come up as we talk about them. And as you remember, I've watched all 14 seasons because they're all on Hulu. So I think maybe like last year or maybe earlier this year when like everything happened, I think I watched all of season 14. So I'm all caught up, and then I think season 15 is like in the process of being written. I don't think they have a release date on it yet, but I'm all caught up. And we'll talk about some of the moments that happen in like season 10, season 11, season 12 a little bit, because there are some pretty good episodes kind of in those that show that they're kind of like still kind of pushing the boundaries of what you can put on a cable television show. The series follows the gang, a group of 5 fictional misfit friends, two twins, Dennis Reynolds and Deandra Reynolds. And Dennis Reynolds is played by Glenn Howerton, and Dee's played by Caitlin Olsen. No relation to the Olsen sisters, in case you're wondering, because I feel like every now and again I see someone popped up who's like, oh, they're related to the Olsens. But no relation there. Their friends, Charlie Kelly, who's played by Charlie Day, and Ronald McDonald, played by Rob McElhenney.
McElroy.
McElroy. what?
What?
I'm pretty sure. Oh no, never mind.
I was like, how do you get McElroy?
I was like, I know my pronunciations aren't
somewhere
great.
Who is Rob McElroy though?
Yeah, McElhenney.
Oh,
I'm just gonna call him Rob
That's
because everyone just calls him Rob. And they're all interviews I've watched. Everyone just say, yeah, Rob.
Rob.
And from season 2 onwards, we have Frank Reynolds, who's played by the adorable and great Danny DeVito.
Who needs to be protected at all costs.
Protect at all costs, for sure. And he plays Dennis and Dee's legal father. The gang basically runs a fictional pub in Philadelphia called Patty's Pub. It's unsuccessful, and they basically get into a bunch of hijinks. Each member of the gang displays unethical behavior and traits such as excessive drug and drinking, dishonesty, cruelty, selfishness, egotism. Each episode, usually you find them hatching elaborate schemes and often conspiring against one another for personal gain, vengeance, or simply just the entertainment of watching the other one's downfall. Don't really know how they're friends. After
I do like the one where they drug everybody with the babies.
Yeah, that was good.
Well, no, because we talked about the downfall stuff, and I was like, oh yeah, I forgot they did the one where they, as far as like how they're friends, they literally drug each other just to prove a point. And make
I mean, Charlie McDennis is literally a game built just for them to screw each other over, and they play it every year.
I just keep thinking about when we're gonna have to talk about cricket.
We'll talk about, and I guess other people too. I guess we specifically cricket, because if there's anyone who has character, there's like really no character development in this show, except for cricket, really. And people who are just close to them just slowly turning into other also bad people the more that they're connected with them. So the premise of the show basically lets you know what you're going to get. This is not a show where you're supposed to like the characters, and it is not one that is very politically correct, like literally at all, even from like the early on title episodes from 2005. So episode 1, like literally the first episode of this entire show, is the gang gets racist. Episode 2 is Charlie wants an abortion. There's other stuff. There's like underage drinking and stuff. And then one of the last episodes of the season is Charlie gets molested. So it's a very, I don't know. You can't make this show now. I don't think it would fly now. But we'll talk about kind of some of that stuff a little bit later on. The creation of the show itself is basically just from the minds of Charlie Day, Glenn Howerton, and Rob. They were all friends in LA, and they just had a short film idea that Rob and Glenn wrote, where basically a friend comes over to another friend's house to get some sugar. The friend tells him that he has cancer, and all the guy can think about is getting out of there and getting his sugar, which is basically one of the episodes where Charlie has cancer. And that's like basically how they shot it. This was basically developed into a pilot episode, and they shot it all like on a digital camera. It's like very like low tech. It's essentially like what you get when you look at when they do anything, when they're trying to market anything. It's basically them doing that, but in real life. So they shopped the pilot to different studios, and all they did was like show the DVD to executives, which is basically what they do when they're trying to get like Lethal Weapon 6 off the ground. Like they just show the video to people, and that's kind of all they did. But
and they think that it's ingenious.
Yeah, and that's, I mean, like in the show, you're like, oh, that's stupid. That's basically just what they did for their pilot episodes, because it's literally just him on like a recorder. It's really not that much different than like the first season, to be honest. It's the production value. So after viewing the pilot, FX Network ordered the first season. The show was budgeted at $450,000 an episode, less than a third of a network standard. After changing the game from a struggling group of actors in LA to struggling bar owners in Philly, the first season would premiere in 2005 for a seven episode run.
I think that was a great decision because obviously I think just it fits with the city of Philadelphia. I mean, everybody always laughs and makes fun of Philadelphia for being stupid, crazy people. Yeah. Like I said, it's like it fits perfectly with like the city in general. They booed Santa Claus. Everybody knows all the stuff. They're not the city of brotherly love. That's just a
they flipped off a baby in a Vikings jersey in the NFC Championship game. So they actually said it that way, and Rob was like, "Well, I'm from Philly, so I understand Philly stuff." So that's basically like why they switched it to Philly after the networks were like, "I don't want to do actors or in Hollywood. Let's do something different." And Rob was like, "Hey, I'm from Philly. Let's just go shoot it over there."
That's what I was gonna ask. Was like, why was that the decision? But I guess it kind of makes it more relatable too.
And they were trying to like do it like that, but they thought like, I mean, there's already stuff like that where you have struggling actors, sitcom kind of type of things, or like struggling people in Hollywood. Some struggling people in New York trying to make it kind of thing. So that's why they went with Philly, because it's obscure and more hijinks. And putting them in a bar gives them like alcohol induced plans.
Yes.
Which after the first season, FX executives were worried about the show's low rating and demanded that they make changes. So basically, the show was on at 10:30 p.m. on Thursday nights, so not getting a whole lot of views. And the network said it would do a second season if they brought in a big name, which the trio was hesitant about because they kind of like the feel of like no name actors, kind of like the lowest budgeted show on TV and things like that. But it's basically bring someone in or there's no more show. So Danny DeVito was brought in after being a fan of the show and after his kids being a fan of the show, talked to Rob more about the character, and he just kind of loved it, bought on season 2, and then they would basically go on to have 14 seasons with the 15th season approved and in the writing process now. So Danny DeVito basically saves the show in that second season.
Danny DeVito is great on this show.
Yeah, him and Charlie Day together is
phenomenal.
Fantastic.
Danny DeVito is precious and awful and so good at both of the things.
So I have to think about my moment again. And I guess the other moment I do is when Danny DeVito says, "Here, toss," or when Charlie says, "Toss me the keys," and Danny DeVito like winds up and pitches them to him into the lake.
You're the underhanded, man.
He's like, "You told me to toss it." I did. And I was like, "You."
Yeah, I guess I didn't say my favorite moment. I don't think I have one because like the whole show is just great. Yeah. I've been like watching the show over again, and there's just like so many things. Like after I'm talking about Danny DeVito, I'm thinking about again, kind of we talked about before when they do like the One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest like parody thing, yes. And they have everyone there, even like a little Danny DeVito there. Oh, it's so good! It's so good. I loved it. I loved it. And then when he runs away, he's just running away. When he comes out of the little couch thing, like we talked about in our Junji Ito episode. Yes. Oh my God, it's so good. Danny DeVito's great. He's great. So before we get into But Why Those, anything else? Any other questions on like the production history or anything like that before we kind of get into some of the stuff?
No.
No, cool.
No,
so
it's pretty straightforward.
While it might not be as good as commercial as Kitten Mittens, The Patty's Pub, Shotgun Shot, or Fight Milk, we do hope you enjoy this offer from Manscaped. I hear prayer is great with a dick towel.
If you're listening to this podcast stuck inside your house with your significant other, I want you to pay close attention. Today's sponsor, Manscaped, can help you out and make the most of your time together. Manscaped promotes clean hygiene when it comes to shaving your balls. It's time to quarantine, Manscaped, and chill. But now that we've said what they want us to say, here's what we think about the products.
Yeah, so Manscaped is forever changing the grooming game with their Perfect Package. It's the perfect package for your package. In the Perfect Package 3.0 comes with the Lawnmower 3.0, which is waterproof, cordless, that has this crazy technology that doesn't nick your balls when you put it next to your balls. Did you hear me? It doesn't nick your balls. That's the best part. But it also comes with some other liquid that are going to help you kind of round out your manscaping routine, which are also fantastic.
Wow, you said balls a lot. Because you know why? We're all about keeping good ball hygiene. And I don't know about you all, but as we all know, we all are from Texas, and I've lived here majority of my life. And we have a saying go, we sweating our balls off. And so you know what that means? Basically, make sure your balls are in good hygiene. Let's not forget about the crop preserver, the anti-chafing ball deodorant and moisturizer. You already put deodorant on your armpits, right? So why not put deodorant on the smelliest part of your body?
So I obviously don't have balls, but as Bruce Wayne's Batpeen has shown us, significant others very much like them to be shaved. You're probably spending more time than ever with your significant other right now, and let me tell you, we notice if it is not kept nice down there. So, the cool thing is that subscribers get a new replacement blade refill for your lawnmower trimmer delivered to your door every 3 months. And I'm going to be honest, I don't think quarantine's going to be done next month, no matter what people say. So having them delivered will help keep you nice and fresh throughout this whole thing.
Yeah, and for a limited time, subscribers also get not one, but 2 free gifts. The Shred Travel Bag, which basically is a bag for all of your wonderful trimmings. And you also get the patented high-performance anti-chafing Manscaped boxer briefs. They are
amazing.
The most comfortable boxer briefs I own. I love them. If I could buy more of them, I would. So you can get 20% off and free shipping with code BUTWHYTHOUGH at manscaped.com. That's 20% off with free shipping at manscaped.com. And use code BUTWHYTHOugh. Most people are loading up on toilet paper, but I'm loading up on Manscaped products. Help your relationship out during this quarantine, your partner, your body, and more importantly, your balls.
Oh my God.
Transitions. I worked real hard on that one. I did. It took me a couple minutes to come up with that one.
That was a good one.
That's probably our best one.
All right, so we're back, and we'll get into some of the but why those. So usually when we talk about these TV shows, and if we're talking about them, they're usually pretty critically acclaimed and award-winning. Well, of course, as per the genre and the show itself, It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia is successful, but not with any awards, like really at all.
I'm not surprised by this.
However, it is the longest running live action sitcom in US TV history, but it also has like no Emmy wins. It has a couple of Emmy nominations, but really nothing really notable. It's more like stunt work and stuff, because in the later seasons they start doing crazy stuff with stunts and things. But it is still going on 15 years later and develops basically a little bit of a cult following, especially after its syndication run on FX, and then with Comedy Central and FXX 14X, has a nice syndication run there. So a couple of reviews from some people, since there's no like Emmy awards to kind of announce. I'll just read some stuff that some people have said about it. So the Philadelphia Inquirer reviewer Jonathan Storm wrote, "It's like Seinfeld on crack." A quote that has basically widely become to describe the series, to the point where FX literally made that the tagline. It's Seinfeld on crack. In 2014, Entertainment Weekly listed the show at number 7 in the 26 best cult TV shows ever, with a comment that it's a great underdog story. If it sounds too dark for you, consider that there's one episode about making mittens for kittens, and it's adorable. In 2019, the BBC called the show the best U.S. sitcom, praising the show's unique outlook and ability to range from nihilistic humor to genuine heartfelt moments. When I read that line, I was like, how many heartfelt moments are there?
Yeah, that was that's a stretch.
Maybe just with with Charlie and Danny DeVito. I think that's really the only heartfelt moments that are there. Rating wise, the show does pretty well. Has an 8.8 on IMDb, 96 on Rotten Tomatoes, 8.8 on TV.com, and a 93% on Google.
So I will say it's sad and disappointing, but I'm not surprised it doesn't win any awards. This is basically the show that people like, but clearly, as we've mentioned on plenty of other episodes, critics, not necessarily critics of rating, but like awards people would not like this per se.
Yeah.
Because like as much as we talked about Seinfeld was bad when we did our Seinfeld episode of these characters, it's obviously this is Seinfeld on crack, but also just the fact of like a lot of the jokes come from this like subtle humor that you have to get, and it honestly wasn't. Not saying that wasn't picked up at the time, but as we even talked about before, of like much as we found stuff funny, it wasn't until we got older and we went through and looked of like you have to kind of analyze the characters itself to see that these are bad people versus this show of like right off the bat you're like, this person is terrible. There's no like
Yeah.
if, ands, or buts about it.
Yeah.
I think that's one of the things we kind of talked about it with our Archer episode, that like part of me feels like some people who take this at like face value or whatever, I think they miss a lot of the larger stuff that it does with comedy, and like the larger I guess like settings that they're making, like what they're saying about the characters that are this awful, that I think it makes it like, oh yeah, I definitely can't vote for that, or like I definitely can't put that I like this show because there's the very first episode of it is called The Gang Gets Racist. Like it, I think that is like that barrier for people to sometimes even admit that they like it, especially like in a critical sense. So
Yeah, I mean, and they're the shows, the writers, the trio for sure are like very self-referential in that way. Like they literally have an episode called "The Gang Desperately Tries to Win an Award," where they're like trying to do all the things that like an Emmy person would like to see in a thing. So they obviously don't get nominated for that. They get nominated that same year for like stunt work because they do crazy stuff in that season. But yeah, they definitely understand that they're not winning any awards. I think they're just happy to still be on TV after 15 years, I think is the bigger thing for them, it seems like.
This once again goes back to the fact that awards are overrated.
True, definitely. Definitely. I was kind of looking at like what was winning the awards at the time, and it was kind of what you would expect. And we'll talk a little later about like what is going on sitcom wise while this is going on.
So I do
talk about.
sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. Yeah, so I was going to say, like, well, because at the time that it's going on, other TV shows are going on that are obviously winning the awards, that are probably critically acclaimed, winning lots of Emmys. So there's really no room for Always Sunny to win an award with a show.
So the only question I did have was, do you think that being on FX played a part in it at all? Because I know when it comes to like the Emmys and everything, people literally just look at ABC, CBS, NBC, and I guess technically Fox, and they like just grab stuff out of those. I know we have other channels and people stuff, but for the most part, that's probably where I could probably say what 70% of the awards come from that.
Well, and I think that also has to do with like the last comment you said, and like even how I said, like the shows on ABC, NBC, CBS, and Fox are network television. Or not, is it network? Yes, they're network television. So their bar of what you can do is so much lower than like the stuff that you can do on cable television, like FX and stuff. So yeah.
Yeah, and I think you're right. I don't think they would have got greenlit. I doubt they took this as CBS and was like, "Here's CBS, here's this pilot."
CBS,
no, HBO maybe.
Yeah, so I was watching one of the interviews and they're like, "Yeah, we took like the first studio that said yes." That was like, yeah, just do this. We like this. Do this, because they kind of like let them do. I mean, they changed some stuff. Like apparently, Cricket, who starts off as like a pastor, was supposed to be like not that great with kids, but the network was like, maybe don't do that, and then they changed like that part. So there is stuff that they had to change, but largely like they get to just do kind of whatever they want on the show, and it just kind of just flows that way. Which kind of gets me into like the next point of where this is basically like a show that's made and acted by friends. Because if you watch Always Sunny in Philadelphia, like the biggest things you can see is that the chemistry between the cast is pretty much like undeniable. Like they do stupid stuff all the time, but as long as like they're all together and they're bouncing off each other, it turns out pretty great. I think this is just mainly due to that the people who are in the show are also the people who are creating it, writing it, and producing it, basically kind of all at the same time. Which allows them to kind of be in sync when their lines are written. Because much of the show is scripted. There's really not a whole lot of ad-lib stuff because what they're writing is just automatically funny, so they don't really have to add in too much of the things. When I was watching one of the interviews today, Charlie Day was like, "Oh, let me ad-lib this part," and then he kind of ad-libs it. He thinks, but it's basically just what they've written down anyway, because it was like it's already funny already. But there are some cool ad-libbing things, and those relationships kind of also allow those kind of moments to flow. So some of the best ad-libs that I was able to find, Charlie improvising his Rock and Flag Eagle song, where he's like, "Rock like an eagle." That's completely ad-libbed because he couldn't remember the words to the song. Charlie's song in The Gang Desperately Tries to Win an Award. I don't think you guys have seen that one because it's a little bit later on in the thing, but he basically like is like playing the piano and singing, and it's just off the top of the dome. One of the funniest ones I saw for sure was Dennis reading his campaign speech that Charlie wrote, if you're not familiar with Charlie, Charlie in the show is basically illiterate and can't write or read. So he wrote Dennis's campaign speech, and the script had it just like, I'm not reading this. This doesn't make any sense. But Charlie Day pushed him to like read the thing, and then he reads it off as like if someone who can't read or write wrote the thing. And that's completely ad-libbed, and it's one of the funniest moments in that whole episode.
I think the funniest thing is that Charlie is pure, like Charlie is like Charlie is a bad person because Charlie lets people tell him what to do and lacks all common sense.
Yeah, he's definitely the best worst person there for sure.
He is.
He's just trying to do all the Charlie deeds.
Charlie is like an empty vessel that other people put badness into.
Definitely.
I will say Dennis, basically when he does any type of his speeches are probably some of my favorite ones where just like, these people are terrible and here's why. Or we need to do this plan.
Yeah. Yeah, those are all great.
Here are the keys to life.
It's just so ridiculous. And then even like past just the trio themselves, I think it's also heightened a little bit too because Caitlin Olsen, who plays Dee, is married to Mac's character in real life, and Charlie Day is married to Mary Elizabeth Ellis, who plays the waitress. So there is just like undeniable chemistry built even outside of just that trio, even down to the relationships that the people have outside of the show, especially since Dee and Mac basically get together during season 2. So it happens like very early on where they're in that relationship, which I think is hilarious. This means that this dude just wrote just terrible, terrible, terrible jokes for his significant other, and it just blows my mind every time I think about it. For basically like 15 years, just doing crazy stuff to his wife.
So it's still funny, by the way, the fact that the waitress turns out this poor person who basically gets stalked into she's actually a bad person by the end.
Another example of good person turned into bad person just by hanging out with them.
Yeah, gets corrupted so bad by them where you're like, oh, this waitress, she's actually kind of bad.
But like, you also can't blame her.
I mean, I'm not saying that she didn't go through a lot of stuff, but it's just funny because by the end, she gets pretty bad. I mean, I don't know where she's gone, obviously, in some of the later seasons, she's still around, but after the last stuff I've seen with her, so it's like,
Oh yeah, no. It goes from like, this is relatable, man, this sucks, oh yeah, they stalked the crap out of you, to holy crap, go away, what's happening?
Yeah. And then also, I also found out that basically everyone's significant other has showed up on the show, because Dennis is also married to the pharmacist who he uses the Dennis system on.
Which is the great shit.
And they got married 2 months before that episode even came out. So they were already together when that episode happened.
Can you explain the Dennis system? Because the Dennis system's great.
Let me pull up the Dennis system.
So when I made the comment earlier about Dennis doing his little rants of when he brings out the paper, I don't even know what those boards are called.
It's a giant post-it boards. I have it right here. D, demonstrate value. E, engage physically. N, nurturing dependence. N, neglect emotionally. I, inspire hope. S, separate entirely. And the reason this is awful is that this is legitimately the signs of abuse.
This is how this is his dating system, isn't it correct?
Yes, it is. Right. It's his dating system, which is literally the signs of abuse. It's awful.
Yeah, it's awful.
Oh, Dennis
and it's even worse when the gang tries to replicate it in their own ways.
Poor Charlie tries to do this, and this is where we get back to the waitress.
It's so bad.
Yeah. Oh.
It's so bad. Also, I found a picture of Dennis in black and white with the Dennis system over him and a Nike logo, and it is really good and awful.
Oh no.
It's so bad. Dennis is probably the single worst character that I have ever seen on television.
Oh, totally. I mean, I don't know about on television, but I guess for not playing like a true villain of like a type of show.
For not being what's his face from You, he's the worst.
Yeah.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Outside of being
that's
like
the
a
bar.
True villain of like I mean, I don't even know if murder at this point, but he's by far one of the worst characters there is.
Yeah.
Oh no, Dennis walked so that guy from You can. Dennis perfected the Dennis system so you can
pretty much
take it to another level.
Pretty
Which
much.
once again goes back to Jason Alexander. Basically, Dennis replicated and took this on crack. and you're not far off.
And they just look the same too. It's
They
just
do, they
it's the
really
craziest part of it.
It's bad. Dennis is one of the worst people in existence. He's the worst character in existence. And every time somebody talks about this show, I'm like, what? And then I watch an episode, I was like, oh yeah, that's why I liked it.
Yeah, definitely. And before we kind of move on from there, I was trying to think, like, I can't think of any other shows that we've talked about, at least on the podcast so far, of shows that are like made by people who also act in it and have like this such deeper role, other than like Seinfeld.
So I was gonna bring this up when you got back to I guess when you talked about the sitcoms at the time, because I feel like this was a good thing, because obviously we talked about Seinfeld, but I think because you talked about, like, I believe The Office is another show that we all really enjoy that does, and I believe they all act in the show that work on that show as well. And I know that along with this one, and it does seem to be not necessarily I don't know about a trend, but it does seem to play an effect where if you have to act out what you wrote, clearly you're gonna know whether it's good or bad, I guess.
Yeah, which is something that they talk about a whole bunch. So like they're like, oh, we wrote that. Like, well, that was a stupid joke. Like, let's go back and fix it. And then just talking about The Office, I think that's a good segue into kind of like It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia takes like a really dark left turn when other shows are going right. So in 2005, CBS gets How I Met Your Mother, and NBC gets the remake of The Office in 2005, which are like generally on a lighter note. I mean, there's like bad people in both of those shows that aren't supposed to be good people, right? But like Always Sunny is definitely kind of outlier in those three shows that are basically making their debuts. So like despite like all that stuff, like those, I mean, like you're saying, like Dwight does crazy stuff in The Office. Barney does crazy stuff, and crazy stuff happens in How I Met Your Mother. But the very first season of It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, the same year that the other shows are coming out, is covering underage drinking, cancer, gun control, and this is obviously like in the wake of post 9/11, the second Bush term, and it's like no one is really pushing this kind of humor out there. The really only thing I can think of that's kind of close to this, what I'd imagine would probably have been Trailer Park Boys. This Trailer Park Boys comes out before this, but it's also like in Canada. I didn't watch Trailer Park Boys. Trailer Park Boys till it hit Netflix anyway.
I tried. I still can't get into Trailer Park Boys. I know some people love it. I could not do that.
And
I will say though, by the way, since you're talking about the first season of Breath of Fresh Air, if you remember the Office first season, they come out with like hitting hard of like, I think they deal with like office harassment. They do with healthcare benefits.
It's real bad. Yeah, like The Office.
The Office comes out hitting real hard too that first season, which some people forget. Like episode 3 talks about when he has to like remove their healthcare.
Yeah, and that's kind of like what I was gonna say is that a little bit they do like, because Arrested Development's also before this, and that one I'd argue is probably a little bit smarter, kind of messed up people you're supposed to hate kind of humor compared to what we get in Always Sunny. And sorry, and then The League comes out after this. I think The League is pretty similar to this in a lot of ways, but The League comes out I think 2009. I think when The League comes out, so
something like that. I think 2009, 2010,
something around there.
Something. Which actually would be bad to do a League episode. It's weird because it's a show that obviously we enjoy, but and we brought up multiple times. But it is one of those like it ends up being an accumulation of like all these episodes that we're doing right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And kind of like while the shows like have come and gone, like there is no more Office, there is no more How I Met Your Mother, or some of these other shows are now just like Netflix kind of afterthoughts at this point. Always Sunny is still here, and they're still doing things with this nihilistic approach to comedy that basically takes Seinfeld's lesson of like there is no lesson, and basically dials up to 10, and they basically continue that trend even 15 years later. I think that some of this dark humor stuff, as much as like we don't want to, like even like Matt said at the beginning, like some of his favorite moments he doesn't want to say on here because some of it's dark, but it's also like really funny.
That's why it took me so long to say anything too.
Yeah, and I think why it lands so well with a lot of people is because it comes off as comedy that's a little bit more realistic to real life and things that people may or may not say, or just at the very least like just be caricatures of people that we know, like in real life, that would probably do some stupid stuff like this, compared to, the kind of hijinks that happen in like How I Met Your Mother and things like that.
So is How I Met Your Mother any good? I've tried watching it. It's not bad, but I've just never understood the hype of it that people always.
It's good. I'll stand by. It's good if you watch the alternative ending, because the original ending is terrible.
So I love the series. I hate the ending. That last episode is awful because it undercuts the entire series. But like the length of the series, like what happens there and stuff like that, I think it's really good. I don't understand why the hell Twitter hates it so much, but they do. And it bugs me. But the same way people say liking The Office isn't a personality, hating How I Met Your Mother isn't a personality either. So
I never cared for it. And out of all these shows, that was the one show I just could not. I've seen episodes because obviously syndication, but it was one show I could not just like. I don't want to sit here and watch this more than an episode.
It gets pretty good. You realize it's like Ted's kind of like not a good person. I mean, Lily's kind of bad sometimes.
I like
too.
Lily.
Marshall's
perfect.
Yeah, Marshall's perfect, and he's also a Vikings fan, so I just automatically like Marshall, just period. But the show's good. The show's good if you watch the alternative ending that they had to come out with, because the original ending was so bad. Besides the point. But I think another thing that like helps Always Sunny have staying power over some other sitcom shows is the fact that it kind of takes place more or less at the same time now, kind of in the way that South Park does. So they get to apply that same kind of like nihilism to their everyday lives. So, the gang, episodes like Gun Fever, the gang goes jihad, the gang solves the North Korea situation, the gang exploits the mortgage crisis, Mac fights gay marriage, Time's Up for the Gang, which is a more recent episode that kind of covers sexual harassment in the workplace, which is much more over the top than they do in The Office. Because now I'm like comparing the episodes in my head, and they definitely go a much different way with it than The Office did. Now that I'm trying to think about it, yeah, the episode's probably not the best. Even like now, I think that was like season 13. I think they did the episode.
No,
it's
the entire. So that's the thing, though. Like, this is like Archer. Archer is never good. None of the stuff that Archer makes fun of or how they do it is good, because you're supposed to know that the people are crap, and that's what Always Sunny does. And I specifically think about Mac, because Mac's whole anti-evolution and his fights gay marriage thing, I have known Catholics like that, and the fact that they ground it so heavily in Mac's Catholicism is where the critique is. I don't know. When I think of like shows that just kind of like, I mean, I liked South Park, but I feel like a lot of South Park just turned into, we're gonna shock and we're just putting it out there, versus we're doing this to like present something larger. And I'm not saying that the writers of Always Sunny in Philadelphia are these grand geniuses.
They would say they are.
They would. But but they're doing things in a way that does offer critiques of the behaviors being done. And they do that throughout the entire series, even when they are extremely like messed up, and I don't know how it got made. Like, there's never a point where I'm like, oh, Always Sunny in Philadelphia is glorifying this. The same way I'm not like, oh, Archer is glorifying this.
But like, and I think back to like your thing about Mac. Like one of my favorite episodes of Always Sunny in Philadelphia is like when he's explaining evolution, and he's just like calling all the scientists science bitch.
Yeah.
And then you see him slowly start swaying the gang over, and like that's arguments that probably really happen with people trying to dissuade people from science, and like it worked with the gang, like it works in real life. Like that's an actual conversation I'm pretty sure happens in that way. Yeah, I mean, obviously, like they're not doing stuff nearly as kind of crazy and out there as South Park, but I think they're doing it in a way that's like relatively realistic enough on like how schmucks from Philadelphia would engage in these real life situations. Like when they do like the podcast thing, and Dennis is like, is there a war going on? I hear there's a war going on. Can you tell me about the war? And he really knows nothing about what's going on there, but he just wants to talk about it. Yeah.
Well, that's what I mean. Like, to me, South Park is just like, they throw things at at audiences because they're trying to just be shock jocks essentially, and that's what they've always been.
I
Well,
mean,
no,
they
they
had
had
I was like, I don't buy that.
I was
for
like, they had okay, no, that they did really good stuff before.
I was like, the first
All of
about
the
10
newer-
seasons or so of
all
South
of
Park
the
are really
new
good.
stuff I watched, like probably like 2011 on, was just trash.
I said I haven't watched anything for South Park in a while. We probably do need to do a South Park episode, but I will say a lot of the early stuff South Park does, and probably up to like said probably 2012, which is probably almost in season 10 to something like 15 or something like that. They do a pretty good job, but I do agree with like some of the most recent.
A lot of the stuff that they are doing now, and
Right.
especially when they switch to pushing a lot more current stuff, like
Yes.
actual like day after, that kind of stuff. It was literally just like it's like the tabloids of animation essentially,
Pretty much.
which is frustrating because you can watch it go down the tubes. But for me, what I was saying is I'm not saying that Always Sunny in Philadelphia isn't over the top. It's over the top, but that they're not. They do things with purpose, whereas South Park currently just does stuff to shock you, which is the difference for me on like what makes it good comedy versus bad comedy, and why Always Sunny can get away with stuff that it does.
For sure. Yeah, so like definitely lots of like dark humor and stuff, but I do kind of want to talk about some kind of more underrated things that they do, because they do obviously do like lots of dark humor, lots of raunchy humor, but there are some like really good episodes that really just show kind of like the caliber of production and writing that they put into this. And some of this is kind of more in the kind of later episodes once they get like a little bit more budget and a little bit more control over how they're filming stuff, and they kind of can just experiment with things. So I have a couple that come to mind just more immediately, and if there's other ones we can kind of talk about those. But I'm thinking about episodes like Charlie Work in season 10, episode 4, where as they prepare for a visit from the health inspector, Charlie desperately tries to get the pub and gang ready, and it's shot like a single take. The episode is filled with energy and fun, and Charlie does the best that he can, while like the gang is like doing their own thing. And you get like a kind of slow burn gag with a bar stool, which is just icing on the cake. I don't know if you guys have seen that episode, but it basically just follows like
Yes.
Charlie's perspective as
Yeah.
everything's going on, and it's such a good episode.
That was the one where I actually just felt sad for Charlie as a character, because I'm like, Charlie just wants to do something nice and keep the bar open, and nobody is actually listening or helping him. And he's just like, you just realize that like Charlie is just an inept person who needs these people, but actually can just be good and just normal sometimes. And like part of me feels
lead the scheme because he does a really good job.
Yeah. So like for me, I just feel like Charlie's just the guy who could have gone either way.
Definitely.
Met the wrong
What's up, Matt?
I said he just met the wrong people.
For sure, because they've also been friends for like ever.
Yeah.
In case you're wondering, like they didn't just meet, like they've known each other forever. So the gang goes to hell in season 11, episode 9. I'm not sure if you guys have seen this one, but the gang boards a Christian cruise liner upon Mac's request, which that alone just shows you where the show is still at. They say like a joke. Mac is still like working through like his is still working through being gay, and he's like, there's 2 gay people on this boat, and they're like, oh yeah, who's the other one? Because he hasn't fully come out at this point.
Oh yeah, that's right.
And they basically do a bunch of stuff, and they end up in boat jail, where they just lock him in like the bottom of the boat because they're just doing ridiculous stuff. And they actually built a tank and for them to film the scenes in when they go to the jail room and it starts to flood. So they basically built this whole giant tank, which they thought at the time was like kind of unnecessary, but they film them going up and down and things like that. They do all of those things. And Danny DeVito actually almost drowns during like the filming of this sequence because he didn't sink very well because he's very buoyant. If you've seen Danny DeVito, he's basically like the epitome of buoyancy. So they had to weigh him down, and then some of the scenes he couldn't swim back up. And then they had to like go save him, and apparently he like stormed off the set one day because they almost killed him.
Poor Danny DeVito.
But from like, a no budget pilot to building a giant tank in a warehouse to film a scene just kind of shows kind of the lengths that they're willing to go even now to kind of push what they're doing for the show. that same season being Frank, season 11, episode 6, is basically a first-person perspective of Frank as the rest of the gang tries to put on one of their schemes, but obviously Frank is old and crazy, so you basically go through a whole episode from Frank's perspective, from a man who is very small, very old, and says things that are not very nice, which comes with its own challenges of trying to like film it correctly from his perspective, but also kind of have the right kind of takes and things like that. A lot of work went into filming that episode, and it comes off really great. I'm not sure if you guys have seen that one, but being Frank, really, really great episode where you just. It's actually like this one of the only episodes where we don't even get like the intro song. It's just Frank basically the whole episode. The gang saves the day in season 9, episode 6. While making a beer run at a local convenience store, the gang witnesses a robbery take place, and each one of them comes up with a scenario in their head that will save the day, making them heroes. Mac has like a 4-minute fight scene versus Yakuza that they like legit choreographed with stunt coordination and wires and things, and it is fantastic. It's like the most like over top like stunt coordination they've done. What I think this is the episode. I'm pretty sure this is the episode that got them the nomination that year because of how over the top and legit they do the stunt coordination. Like they put Rob Mac on like some wires and make him like flip through the air over carousels and stuff. I don't know if you guys have seen that episode. That's pretty good. The stunt work in that's pretty good. I think Kate would appreciate, at least for like the low grade, this is Always Sunny in Philadelphia, like the kind of work they're able to pull off for that. It's pretty good. This is a little bit more controversial because of the stuff that they do in it, but the D. Reynolds Shaping America's Future, season 6, episode 9 / The Gang Makes Lethal Weapon 6, which is where the first one is where they make Lethal Weapon 5, second one is where they make Lethal Weapon 6. And behind the scenes, they do a lot of work and stunt work to make it look bad, but also good at the same time. Like, bad is in like these are some dudes who are just doing the show or doing the movie. Yeah, they do like a whole bunch of like reverse filming stuff to make it look bad. But then they also do blackface in it, which is obviously not good. And then finally the Nightman Cometh, which is season 4, episode 13, which is arguably one of the best episodes in the entire series.
The best episode.
Where they basically do a crappily done production of one of Charlie's plays. Remember, Charlie can barely write and can barely read, and he puts on a whole opera and, crappily done production and still ending in the joke that lands even despite all the ridiculousness that happens in the episode. Early fun fact, the cast actually toured some cities doing the musical, and the tour came after a Westwood Hollywood nightclub advertised the group would be doing the entire production as opposed to a couple of numbers. So they were only supposed to go in there, do a couple of the songs, but they ended up doing the whole thing, and they toured like 6 cities doing the musical. And they actually had Danny DeVito's wife come in and play in the musical. So officially, if you count they're doing the musical, everybody's significant other has been in the show at least once.
So this is where I say 2 things. Dee's Princess Peach dress. And Mac's eyeliner.
I will say this episode is great, and it is just so weird because it's just so off the wall, but it comes off like so well done the way they do this musical.
Yeah, it's just crazy like how they're able to do bad, but it just comes off as like that's you did that bad in like
it's
such
horrible,
the best way
but
possible.
It's amazing. At
yeah,
the
you're
same
like this
time.
is awesome, even though I have no idea what's going on right now.
And I guess like don't tell me what to do. So dumb.
Yeah, I think the one thing that comes up the most in my brain, I don't say it, but like the troll toll.
The troll toll.
I always think
hole.
the troll toll. And it's funny, but it's funny because like every now and then, like I'll like stop Matt in the hallway to kiss me, and in my head I'm like the troll toll. But I never say it. But it's there. That's probably the one thing from Always Sunny that pops into my head like nonstop.
Yeah, and I guess like also thinking about like when they do like the whole musical number at the reunion, where they think that they're just doing like this elaborate like High School Musical
That
thing, and they're
is
just
one of
not
the,
doing
it's
that.
so good.
It's such like a well shot scene, just in
It's so
general. It's another
good.
one that comes to mind of like where it's more than just slapstick jokes. They do some pretty decent production value, and also they put Caitlin Olsen through a lot in this show. They do a bunch of stuff with Dee, and apparently she does a lot of her own stunts. So she just lets everything happen. The verbal punishment and the physical punishment. Caitlin Olsen's all for it.
You remember the episode where she's dating the rapper guy and she can't figure out if he's like actually all there? And then she tries to she makes the jokes, and all of a sudden he like does that whole rap song about her at the end, and she's like, I guess, and like, you're single now. And she's like, oh, I guess he did know what he was talking about.
Yeah, lots of good stuff. So I couldn't really think of some other ones kind of like off the top of my head, but I think those are like the biggest ones where they went past just doing these people in a bar doing messed up stuff to each other to let's film messed up people, but let's also do it in a way that's kind of like more interesting than just a normal kind of sitcom way of doing things, and those come across pretty well.
No, I do think that they've done a lot of cool stuff, but I do like enjoy just like, as we said, the Seinfeld stuff of like everyday things have turned into pretty well, as we like I just mentioned, like Dee just happened to be in a relationship and it turned messed up. I think they get stuck in a pool one time, like just very
yeah.
They go to like the golf course when they try to be, I think it's male prostitutes.
Yep, that's in I think the second season.
Yeah. Yeah, but no, like they've done like very mundane things that end up being very well. Even like just opening St. Patrick's Day, when they do the St. Patrick's Day episodes, have always been good.
Oh, the one where they kidnap people?
Well, I mean, you can say whatever you want about good, but the episode.
No, I'm just saying, like, is that the one? Because they do a couple of St. Patrick's episodes, but the one that comes to my head is.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, like I said, they do the. I mean, but just seeing like some of the stuff, as much as we do, they do a lot of cool stunts and like even the stuff, but it really does have that like Seinfeld on crack for a lot of the episodes of like them just hanging out in a bar and them doing mundane things that turns into like, we found crack and we're now homeless or something. And
yeah, I mean, they did get
literally things that happen. Oh gosh!
Dee and Charlie think that they're addicted to human meat.
Yep.
And
they found out that Dee's like house sitters, like or person she's house sitting's a serial killer. Yeah, that was.
Yep. Well, then there's the other episode too, where the other I don't know. Do they also own a bar, but the siblings come in?
Yeah.
And they get trapped in the bar with the siblings, the crazy ones.
Yeah, that's
not that they're not crazy, but.
Yeah, because then you throw in like the McPoyles, and we're like, who is really the weird people in this show?
Yes.
Yeah.
Is McPoyles weird, or is the gang weird? Kind of one last, but why though? Like more or less, like this is kind of a career starter for a lot of the characters in the show. Obviously not Danny DeVito, right? Because Danny DeVito's like they brought him on for a reason, but. Charlie Day, who played Charlie, of course, didn't really do anything before Always Sunny, other than small one-off appearances. Now is the co-creator of Mythic Quest, which is fantastic. If you haven't watched Mythic Quest, please go watch it. It's great. And has also probably been the one who's done like the most big movies. So he's been in Pacific Rim, the Lego Movie, Horrible Bosses, Monsters University.
I will say Horrible Bosses is kind of underrated. It's not great, but it's not as bad as what I.
It's underrated.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love Horrible Bosses. I mean, I watched that one in theaters. I loved it.
I liked the first one, but even the second one actually was not as bad as I kind of remembered.
Yeah,
because people seem to really hate the second one. I think we went on a plane trip last year, and I watched it. I'm like, oh, the movie's still kind of not. I mean, obviously, it's not. We're gonna win any awards, but it wasn't as bad as like people are like, oh, this is the most horrible movie ever. Like, no, this wasn't awful.
Yeah, but also like, I mean. Kevin Spacey's
also great in those movies, which once again goes back to the fact that this always ends up with me going, really Kevin Spacey in these movies were great, and obviously we know why, but there's a reason he plays these great characters that he comes off great for just those. Even in the second movie, he doesn't do a lot. He's literally in jail the whole time, and it's still just great for like the 3 scenes that he's in.
Good stuff. Rob McElhenney, who plays Mac, basically same as Charlie, hadn't done a bunch. Then he would also go on to co-create Mythic Quest and basically be the main star of that show. Also like to preface this, like they're still doing Always Sunny, which is still a show that's still running. So I mean, they're not going out and doing like amazing things, but they're also like creating other shows like Mythic Quest.
I thought they did I thought them two did another animation show. I could be
They
wrong.
did,
Okay.
but it just wasn't as big. So I was just trying to get like the biggest things.
Okay, that's fine because I was like, I thought they
Yeah.
both did an animation show, and I couldn't remember what it was, but it looked interesting. But I don't remember if I actually watched it or not.
Yeah. And then Glenn Howerton, who plays Dennis, probably had like the biggest career prior to Always Sunny because he was in Serenity as like one of the extras. He was in That's 80s Show, did like 6 episodes of ER.
Time
In
out, sorry, we do
2003.
not
Yes,
count
that's
that
a
80
huge career.
We do not count.
I
that
mean, that's
80
why I said
show.
the
A
biggest
huge
career
career.
of the three
You
of
should
them.
be ashamed to be in that 80 show.
I forgot that 80 show was a thing.
Look. I didn't remember the show either. I had to Google it. I had to Google which character he was in Serenity, and I've watched Serenity multiple times. Apparently, he was just one of like the goons in the thing. But he was a doctor in 6 episodes of ER in 2003, so that's more than than Rob and Charlie did. But now this is a producer and the main actor for AP Bio.
Is that still on?
Yeah, they renewed it on a different network.
Okay. I don't know anymore
Yeah,
because these
so
shows, like, I
they-
quit watching cable television. One, I don't have it, but also because shows seem to come and go so fast that it's hard for me to get invested in things.
Yeah, I just wait till stuff comes up on Hulu or CBS and CBS thing. But yeah, AP Bio's, at least at this point, I don't know with everything that's going on, but they did pick it up. Caitlin Olsen, D, of course, really was, and still, at least to me, this is just my thing here, that whenever I see her on stuff, I'm like, oh, hey, that's D. Like,
Yeah.
bird.
Yes.
This is especially true in Space Force when I saw her in Space Force as like the entrepreneur lady. And I was like, oh, she's doing a good D in this thing.
Yes,
But she was also the whale in Finding Dory and the star of the Mick. I never saw the Mick thing.
I didn't realize she was in Finding Dory.
Yeah, she's the whale shark.
I tried to watch the Mick and no.
Space Force is good, though.
No.
That episode
Yeah,
with her
she's-
is good.
Yeah, she's good in Space Force. And that's kind of all I have, other than some like fun facts, because there's plenty of fun facts for this show outside of kind of what we've talked about. So I'll just run into some quick fun facts, and we'll kind of wrap up from there. Kate's favorite director and person on the planet, who is
Guillermo del Toro.
he plays Papa McPoyle in season 8. I had no idea that was the
Wait,
case.
what?
Yes. He plays Papa McPoyle in season 8 when they do the whole court scene thing, and he's like the crazy dude with like the bird in his
Wait,
head.
what?
Yeah. Apparently he was like a big fan of the show.
Oh my god! Ah!
Yeah.
Holy shit!
Yeah. He apparently is like a big fan of the show and reached out, and they didn't think he was serious, but then he showed up on set one day when they invited him, and they
Fun
made him-
fact, he showed up in the costume. That's his costume.
Yeah. It's great. I watched like a whole bunch like behind the scenes of him, and they're like trying to interview him, and he's just like in character like almost the entire time. It's really, really great. And I thought Kate would really like that once I had to put that.
I
in there
didn't
first.
know this.
I didn't know it either. It blew my mind. I thought I googled it, like I picked like 7 different links because I didn't believe it. I thought they were just messing with me. Prior to Caitlin Olsen joining the show, the character of Sweet D was originally played by Jordan Reed, who at the time was Mac's girlfriend, but was recast after they broke up. She also turned down the role like 5 times apparently because they kept offering her money, like more and more money, but she kept turning it down because she wanted something bigger. And then she was initially written to be kind of more of a restrained character, kind of the voice of reason and not necessarily like the bad person. But when Caitlin Olsen brought it up to Rob, he basically said, we don't really know how to write women because we kind of just write ourselves. And then Caitlin Olsen replied, well, don't write a woman, just write another funny character and I'll make it a woman. So I don't know, like if this is like their love moment, but in my head canon, like that's like their love moment where
The
she
love
was like,
moment where she was like, "Stop being a dumbass, just write, and I'll fix
Yeah.
it. I will fix your mistakes that you make. Just do it."
yeah. So I just feel like that was like their love moment where they trusted each other and they just like or 15 years later, are
She
still
trusted
together.
him to get it wrong.
But
Yeah.
it is funny because it kind of, once again, with Seinfeld, of like, you would think that Dee was supposed to be the voice of reason, and they kind of show little glimpses of it every now and then, but for the most part, you're like, no, she's just as bad, if not worse.
Dee isn't the voice of reason. She just gets picked on by everybody, which sometimes make her seems like the good one.
Yes.
But she's awful.
Well, that's what I'm saying. You
Yeah.
kind of
Her
have like the
and
moments
Dennis?
where you're like, oh.
Charlie is the only one that I give sympathy to because he's a precious baby. He just needs to be saved.
And then since it was basically shot on a camera recorder and Rob basically held the camera recorder the whole time while Charlie and Glenn were in the actual pilot, they basically shot that pilot for nothing. There's like a varying things here. Like people say, oh, they shot it for $100, but Charlie Day says like, no, we didn't spend any money. Nobody got paid for that pilot. So they basically went in there with something that cost them zero, probably cost them money to make, and came out with like this entire show with just that pilot. There is a Russian version of the show called "It's Always Sunny in Moscow."
I need to watch this.
Yeah,
now.
I need to find it too. The cast.
Also, I was gonna say the tailgating episode is also a phenomenal episode.
Yeah,
As a person who
Yeah,
tailgated a lot, yes, is great.
yeah, I love the Green Man. Green Man's great.
Yes.
That's I think the show also kind of skewered my vision of Eagles fans. But then I saw Eagles fans go to the Super Bowl, and I was like, "Oh no, that's how they actually are." Like,
Nope, that's how they
Eating
are.
literal horse poop off the street in viral videos.
yeah, if you're a Phillies fan or you're an Eagles fan,
They had
I'm
to
sorry,
lube
but
the
this is-
street poles because people kept climbing them.
like that's just life. Like,
Can you imagine
Always
being a
Sunny
city
portrays
worker?
you bad.
And that was your job for the day. Hey, can you take this like lube and just go lube all the street lights, please? And like, excuse me? Just take all the poles. Every pole you see, just lube it.
The gang lube street poles is.
That would actually be a good episode. Oh my gosh.
Despite like working in a bar and having a whole bunch of drunk hijinks, the cast actually never drinks on set, so they just act that out the entire time. On the road to becoming Fat Mac, Rob ate about 5,000 calories a day, and apparently it was supposed to be everyone was supposed to put on weight, but everyone like bowed out. But Rob was like, "No, I'm just gonna keep doing it," and then put on all the weight by eating 5,000 calories a day to put on that 50 pounds.
So I will say the best part of Fact Matt, obviously there's a lot of parts of like, obviously the whole, I just put all this on to chisel it out. But I love when they go to the doctor and Dennis just keeps calling him fat, like worth this whole time. And the doctor goes, no, you are the unhealthy one. So.
Yes.
Yeah.
That one's so
That's a
good.
episode.
And I use that
I don't
example
know
all the
how
time.
you're alive.
Because I use that example all the time with Kate when I first met Kate, because Kate apparently never knew the word, like, that skinny fat existed. I was like, oh no, skinny fat's a thing. And she's like, what? I was like, have you never seen the episode? Like, there are plenty of people who look like, quote unquote, healthy that are skinny, but they're the most unhealthy people ever. And that episode was like, always my example of, like, you remember that episode? Like, Dennis was the unhealthy one.
In a world of Dennis's, be a Fat Mac.
It's funny. I was watching one of the things he was talking about, like how he went from the transition from Fat Mac to like Skinny Mac, and he's like, yeah, it could be real easy. Just don't eat, hire a trainer, just work out a bunch of times. It's real easy. Like, why isn't everyone doing this? But when he was like in the process of becoming Fat Mac, the doctor was like, dude, like stop putting on weight, because he wanted to put on more weight, but the doctor was like, dude, just stop. Like, you're eating 5,000 calories a day, and you're doing this in like a few months. Like, just stop, bro.
I want to eat 5,000 calories a day.
Dude, 5,000 calories.
I ate dinner and I'm still hungry right now, Adrian.
And then just kind of one last one. Most of the show is shot in California, obviously, you know, that's just kind of like how it goes. So sometimes you'll see things like Jack in the Box in the background of some shots, and there actually isn't a Jack in the Box in Philadelphia. So there's like little things like that where they get some of that stuff wrong. And now the show is actually shot on the same lot that that Seinfeld was shot on for the last, I think, from season 13 on. They are shooting it on that same lot now.
Nice.
So it's like a circle. A circle. They went to Seinfeld on crack. We're going to be Seinfeld on crack on the same lot as Seinfeld.
Yes.
And that's all I got. Final thoughts, Matt?
I probably need to actually catch up on the show. It's like said before, I did enjoy this show. It's definitely over the top. I've always liked this show. we've not figured out through 146 episodes or 47, whatever this is at this point. This is definitely shows that I watch. I know these characters are bad, and I guess it's hilarious because I don't know. I don't ever expect like, oh, my goal is to my life goal is to be Dennis. Like, no, that's not the point of the show. I was worried. I'm glad to see it still going because I'm not gonna lie. Within like all the stuff within the last 5 years, I thought this was gonna be one of the shows that I'm having to get axed or run into trouble. But to see it's actually still going pretty strong has been nice to see. I wish it did win more awards because I do think it's worthy of a lot of awards, especially considering when we probably pull up some of the stuff that they lost to. I'm like, they're great, but you're in reality you're still probably pretty safe, just like general audience TV show. So that's about it. You know the implication. Go next person.
you now know the implications of if you watch this show. Kate.
Yeah. So my comments are kind of similar to Matt's. I think a lot of the times what happens with shows like Always Sunny or Archer, they just get written off before people actually take time to sit and watch it. Because I mean, I don't think the humor is for everyone because it does go places. But at the same time, I think that if somebody says that this is just a bad show that does awful things, it is. But like, did you actually watch the show, or did you watch the show and the first time something happened, you didn't actually look at what the critique that was happening in it? Because like, it's, I don't know. Always Sunny is a stupid show. Like that, it is stupid. But like, it also like does have some good things to it too. Like especially like when Mac uses his big Catholic arguments, they're making those arguments with that character to show you how bad those arguments are. And so I think when there is that level of parody, it's and done like it's done in Always Sunny, which is a very good way. I think that like people who write it off have no interest of even trying to understand it. So I do think that Always Sunny has a lot to offer.
And I do think just go add on. At the end of the day, there are as much as we say this is bad, there's plenty of people in the world and out just probably even Philadelphia that probably do some of the stuff, if not a lot of the stuff that we see in this show, as bad as it is.
Charlie would 10 out of 10 eat horse poop.
Yes! Charlie, yeah.
And so, like, if you just close your eyes and, like, this is not real, this never happened, it's bad, I'm like, no. The whole, like you said, the Mac argument has been used for years and by probably thousands of people.
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's a great way to kind of get us out of here. One of my biggest things I think just kind of add on. I agree with everything you guys said, but one of the biggest reasons too, like why I like the show, is that you have, like we've had basically this entire episodes. Like, do you remember that one moment, or like, do you remember that one thing, or like if you say a reference, someone like people get it. I love stuff like that, and Always Sunny in Philadelphia is filled with those kind of things, and people who watch the show get those and can have a good laugh about them. And that's something that's really great. And I just love how they've just kind of just stay true to what they've wanted to do in the beginning, and they're still staying true to it now, as far as like they're still using the same intro sequence since 2005. They're still using the same music since 2005. Like they're kind of keeping towards that what they set out to do when they filmed it on a camcorder. And here we are, 2020, and I would love to see what they're writing in their rooms right now to kind of cover what's going on this year. They probably wouldn't even be open for a lot of the next season, probably. I don't know. I'd love to see the kind of comedy they come up with, but yeah, that's it for me. Dick towel.
Oh God. Well, as always, you can find us on social media at ButWhyThoughPC on all of the things. And if you'd like to support us a little bit more, head on over to patreon.com/ButWhyThoughPC. You can follow me on Twitter at OhMyMythRandier. Adrian?
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at SuperRuiz93, SuperRuiz93.
Matt?
I'm going to go really work out and not be a fraud and just work on the glamour muscles.